Everything you use required some sort of enterprise support contract and legal agreement, indemnifications, and so forth. But the industry moves so quickly. The innovation in open source space moves so quickly. So you really couldn't not use it, right? I don't know of an organization today that can say, no, we don't use it. So
Right.
it's more a matter of, all right, now that we know it's happening, how do we use it in a safe, controlled, governed way? So a lot of the work in financial services went around how do we use open source securely, how do we put the right processes in place. And then eventually, people started realizing that if you want access to both attract and retain top engineers, most of them are already involved in open source projects and they want to continue to be involved.
Yep.
And you want to enable your internal engineers to feel like they're part of that community and building that culture. So, it initially started, all right, I'm never going to use it to know I need to use it. Now I need to use it in a secure way. Oh, by the way, if I'm using it, I might as well start contributing because it helps from an engineering culture perspective, attracting and retaining the top people and having the right engineering culture, having the right software delivery practices leads to the right business outcome. So the correlation was made that way. The evolution happened. I think FINOS has done a great job. And you're right to ask, why wasn't this obvious?
Hey there. Before we get started, I just want to remind you about OSFF. That's the Open Source and Finance Forum. For London, it is June 24th, and for New York, it is October 21st and 22nd. It's a great place to get together with your colleagues, both in banking technology and also a lot of great vendors that, are in your community too, and learn. And the hallway track is always the best. But I wanted to quickly mention and thank our sponsors. First, the FinOps Foundation, both in London and New York, GitLab, OS Climate, Red Hat, Temporal, Control Plane, Gradle, Interop.io, Causley, LF Decentralized Trust, Modern, Scott Logic, Spectro Cloud, Tetrate, and Turntable, all from London. We're excited to work with all of them this year. Some of them are new, some of them are members, and it should be a great time. And as of recording this, we're 18 days from the conference and looking forward to an incredible time. It always has been in London. And then New York, our leader sponsors are the Confidential Computing Consortium, FinOps Foundation, again, like I said, and Red Hat. Red Hat has definitely been working with us for the past couple of years, but, really enjoying the collaboration with them on these conferences. We also have OpenSSF, Temporal, Discover, Gradle, Interop.io, Causley again, Sauce Labs, Sonatype, SUSE, and Tetrate. So please support those sponsors because they're supporting us. They make the conference free for the majority of our members who attend. So join us, have a great time, and hope to see you either in London or New York later this year. Thanks.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Griswold of FINOS. Hope you're doing well. Today, from GitLab, I have a new friend. This is George Kichukov. If I got that right, please let me know. But George, how are you today?
Hey, great. Doing well. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to this conversation.
Same. So tell me what you do at GitLab.
So I'm part of our Field CTO organization. I specifically focus on our financial services clients. And the Field CTO role, it's kind of a rising role in the industry. Some organizations have it, some have a whole team of them. Some organizations don't have it, but essentially a externally facing role where you meet with large clients, strategic accounts, usually at a more senior technical level and at executive level, and you define the strategy for a client. Or if you're working with a prospect, you help bring the experience from other large enterprise clients. So we spend a lot of time with large external discussions, strategic conversations. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is internally facing, where we spend time with our product and engineering organization, defining the vision, where is the industry going, what's happening out with our large clients, large enterprise clients, what are their challenges, how are we taking the product direction towards those challenges and solving them for our clients and prospects. And lastly, we also spend a lot of time with our marketing organization internally, creating different blog posts, doing podcasts, and really sort of thought leadership content. So that's kind of three areas of the field CTO role. We have a number of us in GitLab. Some of us are based in different geographies, like EMEA or Australia for Asia Pac. Some of us focus on specific areas. We have one of my coworkers focusing on embedded and automotive. I focus on financial services. I have spent a lot of time in financial services prior to GitLab. So it's really, that's where my expertise is. And I'm really bringing that to GitLab with the idea that we have focus on financial services as a vertical. We have a lot of customers in that space, and we want to really make sure that we understand them inside and out.
Gotcha. And I've actually spent some time with one of your field CTOs, Lee, and Lee and I have had fish sandwiches together in Beaufort, South Carolina, because we actually live probably about 2.5 hours away from each other. So, and our kids go to the same college. So
Yeah, Lee's amazing. He's been with the company a long time, has a long history in the industry as well, and he's amazing and a great colleague.
Good. I'll tell him you said so. So let's talk about, you're alluding to the fact that you've got, deep financial services background. Do you want to kind of expand on that and your roles before coming to GitLab?
Yeah, definitely. So I have over 20 years of industry experience. I started my career in a startup as a developer. We were maybe 4 or 5 employees when the company started. We were developing very specific identity and name matching technology that was used inside CRM systems, inside government searches, so forth. And then I spent about 5 years there. The company grew significantly. I had all sorts of different roles, mostly around the engineering and the development function there. And it was eventually sold to a large organization, and it was time to change. And after that, I spent about 4 years in a consulting company focusing on application development best practices. That was also working with large financial services organizations, not only financial services, but majority was in financial services. And that's how I actually got to meet some of the folks at Citibank during my consulting days. And we really built a great relationship there through some work we did on the project. And then they recruited me to join the bank. I spent 12 years at Citibank, really learned a lot, had a great time there, great organization, great group of people, global challenges. My focus area was always around developer experience, developer services. I had a number of different roles. I ran developer services for a while, everything from code to deploy. We scaled agile practices at Citi. We had, for example, our agile planning tool. It went from 5,000 to 80,000 users. Our binary repository tool, which was managing all the DevOps binaries, went from non-existing to 50,000 users. We were serving something like 40,000 developers. And really all these services from code to deploy. In my last role in the bank, I spent about 3 years focusing on infrastructure automation, both for private cloud primarily, but also public cloud. And it was always a focus on developer experience. That was always my passion. There's too many things that developers need to do from a day to day in their software development lifecycle. The tools are not always easy to use. There is a lot of different tools that do different things. So I was always passionate to provide the right developer experience. So that's a little bit about my history prior to GitLab. So I think one of the next questions would be, so why did I decide to come to GitLab, right?
Yeah.
So I think, so when I was at the bank, we spent a lot of time scaling different tools, trying to stitch together a holistic platform, providing the right developer experience, providing the right controls as a regulated institution for developers. And it was hard to do. It was a lot of hard work just stitching different tools and scaling them and upgrading them and managing them to the point where we couldn't really spend enough time actually working with the development teams on the specific practices and processes that they use to really get better at software delivery.
Yeah.
So we had an approach to that at the bank, and pretty much every bank has an approach to that. They have a framework that they've developed over the years, and these frameworks could be, anywhere from 5 to 10 different tools in the tool stack, and they've been maintaining and building them and driving adoption and evolving them. But that is a lot of hard work, and it's oftentimes non-differentiated work, right? It's not part of your core business in banking. It is every organization, financial service and banks are ultimately technology organizations. Big investments are made in that. But we do want to see those investments focused on differentiating business applications, consumer banking applications, or investment corporate banking applications, where really the different organizations can differentiate. When it comes to software delivery, it is a competitive advantage, but the tools you use, you spend so much time building them that sometimes they turn into a bottleneck. So having spent time working on that in one organization, I really wanted to take the industry forward and join an industry leading organization like GitLab, where I get to work not just with one bank, but with a number of banks. And I get to drive these practices in a way that really improves the developer experience, makes software delivery streamlined and controlled. And especially in the regulated industry, there is so many different controls, anything from, 50 to 100 different controls you would have typically in a software development lifecycle. And a lot of the times you have to build those in-house, and organizations ended up building them in-house. But the reality is that the industry has evolved, especially in the last 5 years. Companies like GitLab are now providing platforms that take you 90% there. And you don't have to build custom frameworks, custom development environments that are specific to your organization.
That's fair. So before we go on to some other things, I did want to kind of go back to developer experience in general. Can you and only because we have people that listen to this podcast that are on the developer side and the technologist side, but we also have people from the business side of financial services and, tech companies as well. So maybe as a kind of a primer, could you kind of define what you look at as developer experience?
Yeah, it's a broad concept. I will start it with just why is it important that we have good, fast software delivery? There is a number of research studies and Dora metrics and others that clearly show correlation between strong technology maturity, software delivery maturity, and business outcomes. So the strongest tech companies that know how to properly do technology and engineering tend to also have the right business outcomes. So that's kind of the first driver. Business outcomes are correlated to your overall software delivery practices. And then your software delivery practices depend heavily on the tools that you use. So that's one aspect of the developer experience. The processes that you have instituted in your organization, that's the other aspect of developer experience. And the people that you have, how happy they are, how satisfied they are, how much of their time they spend doing the things they like. So this combination of, happy engineers, good engineers that are enabled to do what they need to do, the right processes that are streamlined to deliver to the business, and the right tools and platforms to make it easy end to end. This to me is what defines the developer experience.
That's cool. So you're saying they're happy engineers? I'm just kidding.
I think there are, and in fact, when they're not happy, they're very verbal about it, right? You would hear it, you would know it.
Oh, I
But
have.
there's different levels of happiness, and sometimes they'll be 90% happy, but you will not stop hearing about the last 10% that they're not happy about. So you're right. I mean, to ask that, are they ever happy? But I think it's a demanding group. Having worked with a global community of engineers for many years, it's a demanding group. It's also a group that's a problem-solving population, so they like to offer ideas and be very proactive about not just talking about a problem, but also offering solutions and approaches to solving the problem and being very involved in those solutions. So it's a really interesting group. I love working with developers, just not only because there are challenges to be solved, but because they're really open to hear about their pain points, but B, very proactive about offering solutions and ways
That's
to
fair.
address them.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And also, just so you know, that like I was in a startup a long time ago that I was the only non-engineer, and it was like 4 former NCR engineers, and I was in the middle. And anyway, they were happy as well. But it's always, it's always fun from the marketing side and the business side to sometimes, sorry, ask, are there happy engineers? Because I've definitely seen it. Anyway, but it sounds like also like, you know, yes, I mean, maybe, I'm not really making fun of the concept, but happy engineers, like that should make your business go a lot, smoother, cleaner, more profitable as well. And so, is there an open source component to this? Is there, I think you talked about that open source can help, not necessarily just from the GitLab side, but, in general.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, first of all, open source has grown so much. There is hundreds of thousands and millions of open source components out there. Huge software stacks and ecosystems like Linux and Kubernetes and others are completely built on open source. So I think open source has a big role to play on several levels. As a user, as a developer, you consume a lot of the open source contribution, so you don't have to recreate it. You build on top of that. So you really take advantage as a user of open source. And that's one aspect. But B, oftentimes the engineering community is really happy about sort of building, working on a particular project for the sake of just really the engineering effort and work around it, not necessarily for the financial outcomes or even for a specific sort of, I would say, business outcomes. But it's more around, hey, I really see a problem, technical problem that I'd like to solve. I really see a great product or a great project with a great community. I want to be part of it. And there is a big aspect of open source that really opens up these opportunities, being part of not just a community, but also being able to grow a product, grow a community, participate and contribute, and see your contributions used by a number of different users. So I think there is definitely a big engineering cultural aspect around participating in open source that drives not just the specific outcomes of being part of that project, but that entire engineering culture around contributing, being open with the technical work you do, being open to feedback from other community members who may sometimes critique what you do, sometimes correct it, improve it, build on it. So I think there is a huge aspect of open source that's sometimes underestimated, which is not about only open source security or open source consumption, but it's really about creating an engineering culture where everybody can contribute, where everybody feels part of a community, everybody feels that their efforts are open to a wide audience. So this really driving engineering excellence, engineering culture, and participating in open source does a big part of that. I'll also talk a little bit about from the GitLab perspective, being an open source, open core company from the beginning, unlike some of our main competitors who are the place for open source sometimes, but they're not open source themselves, which is interesting, right? GitLab has been open source, open core from the beginning. And we actually have a very strong program. We call it a contributor program, contributor support program, where we work with our community. So GitLab has about 2,000 employees, about 1,000 or so of them are in various engineering roles. But we have over 4,000 contributors to the GitLab platform. So about 3-4x larger than what we end up employing. So that's a huge community, and it happens through investments in community. And also, we work with our own customers. Oftentimes, when you buy a vendor product, and there is something specific that you need and you're waiting months or years, or sometimes you never get that feature that you specifically need. Being open source, open core, some of our clients choose to work on those features. We enable them. We provide them a number of a development environment that's hosted in GitLab. We provide them the training that they need to contribute. we really recognize them through various community recognition mechanisms. So we really nurture that contribution model. And we see pretty much all of our enterprise customers contribute 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 different features per year in the product. And the product is a very sort of, I would say, strong engineering culture in the company that also comes from this open source community.
Yeah.
And every month on the dot, on the 20th of every month, GitLab does a new release, 160 plus consecutive releases. Every release has, 100 plus different features or issues that are addressed. So this cadence is only really possible through that community model, and we really nurture it and spend a lot of time on that. So open source plays a big role both to us as a commercial company and to our clients as building up an engineering excellence culture.
That's interesting. Kind of going back to your city career and then now, and speaking about open source, I would say that when I came into this industry back in 2017, and I've said this before on the podcast, that like I came from open source in the first place. So, and on the business side, we were, we had just finished, years of going raw open source, hey, this is the way and everything. And then probably around then is when, 2017, 2015, where things started to go forward of like, it's enough about the raw. It's more about like, here's how you actually do stuff, not we should. When I came into the financial services industry through FINOS, through the Symphony Software Foundation initially, I was very confused. 8 years ago is why are we doing raw open source? I don't understand. Like, I thought this was something that was solved already. I didn't understand the regulated nature of the industry and everything at the time when I first came in. But as somebody who worked at, Citi for 11 years, as somebody who now works with multiple banks, when you look at open source, I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, again, not putting anybody in trouble, but like the history of like actually, not just consuming open source, but then being, like able to actually contribute back on the banking side. And then, where are we now based on what you deal with on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I was, from the early days of FINOS, I was a big fan. I was always attending the FINOS meetings in community. And I was a big believer that's the right model. But certainly in the early days, financial services organizations were a little bit, what's the right word to use? Not as involved, right? Didn't believe that was the right model. In fact, I remember some people saying, oh, no, we don't use open source. We got to buy it from a vendor. We would never use open source.
Mm-hmm.
So that changed and evolved fairly quickly. And, the part of that was regulations. Everything you use required some sort of enterprise support contract and legal agreement, indemnifications, and so forth. But the industry moved so quickly. The innovation in open source space moved so quickly. So you really couldn't not use it, right? I don't know of an organization today that can say, no, we don't use it. So It's more a matter of, all right, now that we know it's happening, how do we use it in a safe, controlled, governed way? So a lot of the work in financial services went around how do we use open source securely? How do we put the right processes in place? And then eventually, people started realizing that if you want access to both attract and retain top engineers, most of them are already involved in open source projects and they want to continue to be involved. Yep. And you want to enable your internal engineers to feel like they're part of that community and building that culture. So, it initially started, all right, I'm never going to use it, to know I need to use it. Now I need to use it in a secure way. Oh, by the way, if I'm using it, I might as well start contributing because it helps from an engineering culture perspective, attracting and retaining the top people and having the right engineering culture, having the right software delivery practices leads to the right business outcomes. So the correlation was made that way. The evolution happened. I think FINOS has done a great job. And you're right to ask, why wasn't this obvious? Why weren't people just doing that to start with? But it's an evolution. It's a process. There's different generations of how technology was done. Wall Street's been around for 100 plus years, right? Sometimes some of those banks have been around for 200 years. So it takes time to evolve into the right model. So and FINOS did a great job, really proactively driving that community. It doesn't happen on its own always. These community efforts require a lot of work, a lot of structure, a lot of people to help get it off the ground. It's similar to how we do it our contributor program in GitLab. We actually have people who spend time making it easier for contributors to contribute. If we have that, it will be a little bit more difficult. We'll have less contributors. And with less contributors, we have less features and less new things, new innovation that comes in our own users and customers. So I think definitely that evolution happened. Pretty much all financial services now realize that open source means the proper culture. It's helpful. It's good for them. They still need to have the right processes. I was talking to a financial institution recently. They told me our core business IP is our source. If somebody were to steal or leak our source code, we could be out of business. This is how important this is for us. So there's certainly, so it's important to have the right protections and governance in place to make sure that leaks don't happen. Everything is done transparently, following processes and practices. But certainly, once you build that culture, yes, it's okay to contribute to open source. Not only it's okay, it's great. Please do more of it and spend time both internally and externally participating in these communities, driving that innovation brand for the organization, building up that culture so you can build a reputation that this is indeed a really strong engineering culture where top engineers want to come and stay, have the right developer experience to prosper and do well and drive the right outcomes.
Whew. You are a walking advertisement for open source and financial services, my friend. That was good. That was good. Well, unless you had anything else, I think that's a good stopping point right there. And that's what I mean. Like you hit the nail on the head, really, with open source and financial services.
Well, I guess I'll wrap it up with saying the developer experience is important. It's a combination between people, process, and technology, and tools and platforms. Do look at the tools you're using today. Are there too many of them? Are you context switching too much? Do you have a sort of completely segregated developer experience going from one place to another to a third to complete your task? Are you thinking that this is the right culture? If a new person comes into your organization and you have to onboard into 10 different tools, are they going to have the right experience? Are they going to be effective and productive from day one? And another aspect of it that I also want to talk about is deployment models. A lot of people don't know that GitLab, the GitLab software package, is the same one that we run on GitLab.com with 50 million plus users. Self-managed, we have a lot of self-managed customers who run it on their own, but it takes work, it takes a little bit of knowledge and administration. And then we have another sort of deployment model, which we call GitLab dedicated. The same package, but it's a single tenant instance that we run for our client, segregated from anybody else. It's not on GitLab.com with 50 million other users. It is for a particular organization, especially financial services love that. We're doing a lot of work with government. We have the FedRAMP certified now for moderate for government with our GitLab dedicated. But what I wanted to say is that GitLab will not only give you a great platform where you can do your end-to-end software delivery, but can manage it for you. So now you as a team are not spending time building running tools, integrating, upgrading. You're actually consuming an end-to-end software delivery platform as a service, secured and segregated and compliant. So you can actually focus on fixing developer experience, other aspects, the best practices, your branching strategies, your CI/CD model, your anything, your planning practices from idea to production, your release practices. So that's where you get the most benefit from a software delivery maturity. A lot of the times what I see in organizations, people are spending so much time scaling, integrating, upgrading, managing the tools, that they don't have enough time to spend with the developers from the different business units, from the different regions to actually mature the underlying practices. And that's where you get the most benefit.
Yeah. I agree. That's not only in engineering and marketing and all the things that we do as well, but now it's good that you guys are addressing that. Cool. Well, George, thank you again for spending time with me today. Next time we're in New York, I'd love to get together. I'll buy you a fish sandwich just like I did Lee, if that's your thing. I hate fish, honestly, and I still ate fish sandwiches with Lee. But anyway, but I appreciate your time and always, happy to have GitLab as a member. But, every time I talk to one of the employees at GitLab, I learn a lot. So I did today as well, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Grace. I would love to have a fish sandwich. I like it. So definitely something we want to do. And yeah, so you guys at FINOS are doing a great work. I know it's a lot of effort and a lot of investment, and please keep doing that. It's needed and it's impactful.
Cool. Thank you, sir. And with that, I'm going to say good day, good night, wherever you are, and thank you.